Hello and welcome to another scrapbooking process video. I'm Tracy, also known as MercyTiara, and I share scrapbooking process videos, project shares, tips and tricks, unboxings, and more here on my channel. And today I'm going to be walking you through how to make this really cute mini album using the Outdoorsy scrapbooking kit from MercyTiara Kits. I'm using the chipboard frames that came in the add-on from that kit. And this is a very basic mini album. You can bind it. I'm going to show you one way to bind it, but there are a few different ways that I can suggest for you to bind this if you don't have a binding machine. And the nice thing about this mini album is that it is pretty nicely decorated just as it is, using very minimal other embellishments, and it looks really great. I think I'm going to go back and embellish mine even more than this, so keep an eye on my channel for later on in the month. You might see another video of this album, maybe a little bit updated, maybe a process video, or maybe even just a project share that shows you what I ended up doing. But today's version of this album is fine. It makes a really great gift, especially I think that when you're gifting things to non-scrapbookers, sometimes keeping it more simple is a little bit of a better way to go. So here comes the simple version of this. I'm going to start by deciding my layout. I'm going to use my Bind It All, which is a very old tool from Zutter. I'm pretty sure that you can't buy these anymore, and it's been so long since I've used it that I sort of forget how to use it. So you're going to see me bumble around a little bit as I try to figure this out. But what I basically want to do is I want to poke some holes so that I can use this binding tool to have some spiral binding on the edge of these pages. I'm going to use these larger chipboard frames that come in the kit. These are from Simple Stories from the Trail Mix collection. I have a number of different binding options here for the rings, and I'll decide that at the end. I'm going to perhaps use this one as my title. It says Adventure, so I think that it makes a good front page. And I have my photos printed up here. I'll have it on the screen in a few minutes, but my photos are printed up specifically to fit inside of the holes. So I just measured the holes ahead of time, and you don't have to because the numbers are coming up in the video. I just don't remember them offhand, but when they come I'll mention them again. But I have my photos printed ahead of time in the right sizes to fit in the holes. And my thought is that each of these frames can be a different page in my mini album. It's not going to be a very big or thick one. And then the photos will go in the holes, and then the flip side, I will use pattern paper to make a second page. So I'm trying to figure out how these are going to fit together, because even though one of them is off kilter, see how these all line up really nicely? I want my album to be more than just 3 pages though. So I'd like to use the fourth chipboard frame there, which is 2 stuck together. And it's stuck together in a weird way that I could just bind it as it is. It gives me a straight edge. But what I don't like about that is that when the album is closed, that page looks like it was improperly bound, like it's kind of sort of hanging down on one side and not on the other side. So what I'm going to do is actually add a piece of acetate to that frame, and then the binding will go on the acetate to hold it basically so that it's a little bit more lined up with the other pages. You are still going to see that this page is a different shape than all the other pages, but that's okay. I actually like that. I like my album pages in mini albums to be all different pages. So all that I did there was I just outlined basically I used one of the frames as a template, and I outlined it with my piece of acetate. I just picked the thickest piece of acetate I have. I don't care that it has these dots on them because you're really not going to see much of it. And I'm just trimming it down so that you can't see the marker, because that would be distracting. And once I attach this piece of acetate to the frame, I'm just cutting out where the photo will be so that I'm not covering up the photo with acetate. Once this is glued to the frame, it will serve as the place where the binding will go. You'll see as it goes along. So I'm using Tombow Mono Multi Adhesive because I know that it's very, very strong. This art glitter dries clear. I hear that it's just as reliable, but I personally haven't used it long enough to be able to say this is a glue I want to use on mini albums. So I always use Tombow Mono Multi because it is super, super strong. I've never had any mini album piece that I've used with Tombow Mono Multi ever come off. So that's why I'm using this. I do not want this little book to fall apart. The thing about Tombow Mono Multi is it's super sticky, so I did have to use a baby wipe to clean up the residue where it oozed out there, but that's okay. And now I'm going to forget. I want to use the space bar because I think I want my binding to be closer to the edge than what it would be typically, but I forgot to use it and it turns out it worked okay. I don't think I should have used it, so I'm glad. You're supposed to use that little insert piece for binding with very thin binding rings, for tiny little rings. And so I'm just showing you the angle. So I'm glad that I didn't use it, just to finish that thought. Now I'm just showing you a different camera angle so that you can see as I just kind of play around with how am I going to line this up. Now, the nice thing is that now that I've added that acetate piece, that weird piece lines up so that there's some hanging out on the top and some hanging out on the bottom. So it looks more purposeful. It doesn't look like it was misbound or kind of like hanging off the bottom like it did before. So I use some binder clips just to hold my pages together so they don't wiggle around. And as you can see, that works really great. So I bound those two at once. And what I should have done, if you're doing this, what I should have done is I should have picked out what patterned papers I wanted to put on the backs of these and binder clipped the patterned papers in place as well. Like I should have rough cut them, binder clipped them in place, and punched the holes all at once. That would have been much better. But you'll see my method, which is makeshift hack way to do it when you forgot to do it that way. It's been a very long time since I've made a chipboard mini album, so I've kind of forgot what my process is like. After, when I got halfway through, I realized, oh yeah, there are times I've done this. I've applied the cardstock to the chipboard before I bind it. That makes much better sense. So anyhow, lessons learned, and I will pass that on to you. So if you make this mini album, you won't make the same mistake that I made. So right now, I just punched holes in the raw chipboard pieces with nothing on the backs of them at this point. I thought about using that extra frame as another page that would just be a different sized page in the album, but I actually didn't have enough photos to have another page, so I'm just gonna not use that. And now, as you can see, I can now put this photo in. I'm just running my adhesive around the white edges of that photo, and then I am placing it down. This is measured exactly perfectly when I printed up these photos so that they will fit perfectly in the frame. And I can see a little bit ahead on my timeline. I can see that those numbers are coming up if you're waiting for them. Just give me a few more minutes. So I have all these vertical photos, which I printed at the smaller size. They're all exactly the same size, which is really nice about this. This is why I wanted to make a mini album out of it. It's really one of the simplest mini albums I've ever made because all of the openings are the same two sizes. So you just print all your photos at those two sizes and you're good to go. I did print a few at different sizes only because for the back sides there were no frames, so they could be any size. So I left a little bit of a white edge on those as I trimmed them down so that I could have something to adhere them to the frame with. Just using my ATG for this, I find my ATG a lot easier to handle, and I just like it for any projects like this. I go back and forth between Zig Glue Runner and ATG. They're both equivalent in terms of how strong they are. There are those photo sizes. Finally, 3.5 by 5 and is the bigger size, and then 2.5 by 3.5 is the smaller size. That'll stay up there for a few minutes there for you to copy it down if you're planning to make an album with this chipboard set. And I'm just arranging the photos so that they go with the theme of the page. So this one says nature and it has a little field book on it. So I put the photo of Noah in the water and the beautiful tree at sunset or sunrise, I think it was. And this one has the car going. And so I was thinking, I kind of like it with this one because it has the car and the trees and kind of like, you arrive and then you unpack and set up your tent. So I thought I would put this one on this page. I haven't decided exactly what order these would be in yet, although I do know which one will be my title. It's that adventure one at the front. I put my favorite my favorite photo in that one, so it's a little bit of a closer up picture of my daughter and her boyfriend, and then there's how it's going to look. So at this point, I've decided on the order of the pages. Now, one thing that I like to do with my mini albums is have something that goes through the mini album and is like a consistent type of embellishment or theme that continues the whole way through the album on all of the pages. I don't do it in every single mini album, but I like to do it in many of my albums. And I was thinking that these flashcards with the camping theme would be a really great element that I could repeat on every page. So my goal here is to cut out a bunch of these flashcard elements. This is from the Simple Stories Trail Mix collection, one of the pages in the Outdoorsy kit. And I'm going to aim to have one of these on each of the pages, and they would make sense to go on the back side, so the non-decorated chipboard side. And so we'll put backpack there. And now this photo is not the greatest one, but I wanted to include it because it shows that they were on an island. It's the only photo that I have that's of the island. So I'm just figuring out now which photos will go on the back sides of each of these pages and which little flashcard piece will go with it as well. So now I have my album set up in terms of what will go on the back sides of each of these pages. And the very back of the album is going to have a photo as well. I love this pattern paper from Simple Stories. It came in the kit and I just adore it. I'm just measuring what size of a piece I need to get here because as you can see, it's the back side of the flashcards and it's been really chopped up. And I do have a second piece because I got the pattern paper add-on, but I'd like to use this piece if I can to get a piece, and I want the chevrons to be going the right way, like I want them horizontally on the page. So I'm just figuring out how I need to do this so that I can get the right the right size piece. So I'll use my pencil there to mark that. And there. I have that for the back piece of this, but I'm going to end up changing my mind about it at some point. And here's where I'm realizing, I wish I had already punched the holes. I should have figured all this part out and then punched the holes. But like I said, lessons learned. Oh, I love this paper. The paper with those trails all over it. Oh, that's my favorite paper in the whole kit. I just did a 12 by 12 page with that, and it's amazing. So I'm just going to make this one the same size as that because there are two of these pages that are exactly identical, so I can use the same. And now I'm going to try to punch holes. It's going to take me a while to figure out that it's just too hard to figure out. There might be a way for this machine, and this is an old machine, and I feel like upgrading to the cinch just because it seems like the cinch. I've watched a few videos. I haven't watched them lately, but when the cinch first came out, I thought maybe I should upgrade. It looks like it's easier to use than this one. And then I thought, it's too much of an expense and I have one that works, so I'll just keep using this. But this process of making this album made me feel like really the hardest part of this was figuring out my machine. And that makes me not want to do many albums. So I'm thinking about upgrading to the cinch. If you have the cinch, leave me a comment and let me know, should I upgrade? Because I feel like I should. Anyhow, even with the cinch, it would probably be hard to go back and put holes in pages that you forgot to punch holes in. But anyhow, I did my best to figure out where I needed to put those holes so that they would line up with the chipboard on the back. I'm going to use my corner rounder, and I used the wrong side. I used the 1/2 inch and I should have used the 1/4 inch, and I don't want to do it over again, so I'm going to leave it. I think I used the 1/2 inch on one and realized it was too big, so I used the 1/4 inch on the others. I am using my Art Glitter Dries clear glue on this with the metal tip dispenser. I love that. And I'm just gonna, you've got to use it at some point to know how well it works for these projects. So I'm using it now and we'll see. The holes don't line up exactly perfectly, but it's all right. Here's something that I like to do with my mini albums that is really above and beyond. You do not have to do this, but it's just one of those little details that I notice. Nobody else probably notices it, but I like to sand the edges of my patterned paper on the back side of my chipboard. I feel like it helps make the chipboard and the cardstock and the pattern paper kind of feel as one. And it also kind of removes any edges that weren't exactly perfectly lined up. And I just like to do that. Like I said, it's optional. You don't have to do it. Now, I like to include the whole process, so I'm sorry if this is confusing, but I just like to show you and be upfront about how things come together, that they are not always as easy as it looks on YouTube. So here I'm thinking about grabbing another page out of that same pattern paper, but I'm deciding not to instead. In fact, I'm feeling like my problem here is that for this page, I love the pattern paper, but I do not like that photo. It's a silly photo. Like, I tried to take a picture of the car packed. First of all, the car wasn't even packed all the way. And also, I just don't like how it came out. It wasn't composed very well. And it doesn't really tell much about the story. Obviously they packed the car to go camping. If I had gotten a better shot, or if it was like compellingly crowded or something like that, it would be a better shot. And I don't like the yellow edges and that bright blue and this is my favorite pattern paper. So I want this page to look nice because it's my favorite. So I'm going to end up not using that photo of my car trunk because I don't like it. So we're not going to use it. I am again just kind of shaving off these edges. Usually I have a little sanding tool that I use, but I can't find it. So I'm just using my nail file. So now that I took out that photo, this page doesn't have a photo, but I thought, you know what? That's okay. You don't need a photo on every page. There's a photo on the facing page, right? So I'm still going to use that lantern. It's probably my favorite of all of those flashcards, but I'm going to trim it down a little bit. It feels like it's just a little bit too big for everything else on the mini album. So I'm going to trim down all of those flashcards so that they're a similar size. I found some little journaling tabbed pieces that go together in a threesome up there. The yellow, you can see the yellow one on front, but there's 2 tucked behind it. And I'm definitely going to use those. Those are perfect for mini albums. You can make a little pocket and pull them out and put lots of journaling in there. So I thought about putting them in here, but maybe I'll wait this is the second page, right? So it's the page right behind the title. So I don't really want my journaling pieces to be there. I'll put them in further in the album. So I'm just going to layer a few of the die cuts from the Simple Stories journal bits and pieces die cut set that came in the kit. This twine also came in the kit, and it came with some craft tags. I'm just going to use the twine by itself to put on these other tags. And then I'm going to do a little bit of outlining. I'm using a brown pen here, and I'm just outlining some of the main features, including the little reinforcer, just to make it look a little bit more realistic and give it a bit more presence on the page. And then I'm going to trim down, as I mentioned, my flashcard. And then I'm going to grab my distress inks. I do not like how I store my distress inks. They're in these trays. I just kind of grabbed them. They used to be something else, and these are a DIY version. They fit in my Alex drawers, but I don't like having to pull them all out just to get some. So I'm thinking about coming up with a different option for storing my distress inks. Let me know how you store yours. I have some ideas. I like those Stampin' Storage things that everybody gets for their room. I think it might be time for me to buy those. So I just edged the ink with frayed burlap distress ink with a little finger dauber. And I'm going to layer the tag on right there, and then the flashcard on the tag overlapping, and then nature. I'm actually going to pop that out on some foam dots. And I ran out of the thin foam dots that come in the kit with the adhesive. They don't come in the kit, but we have an adhesive add-on. And I'm overdoing it with the foam because this is a mini album, so it's going to get handled. So I want to make sure that it's really both supported and also stuck on there really well. So these are Stampin' Up! Dimensional adhesive. There's no better, like all dimensional adhesive is pretty much equivalent to one another. They're just different shapes. I like the Stampin' Up! Ones. I also like the American Crafts ones that come in our kits as well. This is a little journaling bit that I picked out. It's really, really cute. It has this little fern taped down. It looks like a little field note type of thing. I'm taking my roller date stamp and I'm using Sahara Desert ink from Stampin' Up!, which is a soft, crafty, greeny kind of color. And I'm stamping August 14th, 2023 and August 15th, 2023. And I stamped it multiple times, so it looks kind of casual and and messy. So flipping the page, I'm now working on the back of the second page. And for this one, I have this is that wonky shaped one. So I am going to erase the pencil marks that I made as I thought about using this as the back side of that other page. And instead, I'm going to use this as the back side of this page. I just don't want to lose anything, so I'm moving things around a little bit so I don't lose track of what I've got. And I'm just tracing the page, and I will just cut it by hand here. I trace the back of it so that it's going to be the right shape once it's, reversed. Round some of those corners and fix up my cutting a little bit here. Add that little nook and cranny that's in this. So now you can see that because I traced all the way around it, some of the paper is showing there. I'm just going to trim that off and benefit from the fact that that piece of acetate is clear, and it's going to be almost like invisible binding on some of these. I just traced where the holes were this time instead of trying to deal with my my tool. And what I'm doing is I'm just tracing out the holes, and there's slits by the holes so that you'll see when it's close up. I'm just, once you glue it down, you won't even see that there are slits there. I'm putting glue everywhere where the chipboard is. I don't want the glue on the acetate that won't have cardstock behind it. Pardon me. And so I'm just going to place this, and using liquid glue really helps you be able to smoosh it around if you need to. And even though there are slits in these little flaps that go around the hole punches, I'm just putting extra glue there to make sure that that stays stuck. You really can't see it because I'm gluing it down, it's staying stuck, and you can't even see that there's slits there. And that would be a pretty good solution if you make the mistake that I made and forget to punch your holes. I would, if I could do it again, I would have done all the pages that way. Well, if I could do it again, I would have remembered to mount them all and then punch it, but I'm going to use my little nail file for just finishing off those edges and making them really neat. I just be very, very careful when you do this that you're not lifting the chipboard piece, right? So I'm only sanding the pattern paper. I'm not sanding the chipboard that it's attached to. Otherwise, that chipboard is going to start to unravel and look a little messy. I'm going to trim down this photo. It's going to fit really nicely in the very center of this page. I'm trimming it so that I have a bit of a border, and I just wanted even less of a border, so I just trimmed it a bit more. And the flashcard for this is Tent. I'm going to trim off all the white edges of that and use my little finger dauber and frayed burlap distress ink again to just make that look a little bit messy and outline the edges a little bit. Because this is a pattern paper embellishment, the tent flashcard, I actually don't want it to extend off the page. If it were chipboard, I probably would have had it extend off the page and then do a little something on the back of it to make it pretty. But it's just not going to hold up to a lot of wear and tear if I have little bits of pattern paper extending off the edges of the pages. I had glued my letter stickers shut for some reason. I don't know how I did that when I was unboxing. But yeah, so I had to redo that. So this one is going to have the title of the campground where they were. I don't love that photo. It's through my windshield, and the windshield has a crack actually. And so it's not the most beautiful photo, but it does show the whole island ahead of you, and you can see that it's an island and that we're driving across a bridge to get to it. So that's why I'm including this photo, even though it's not great. It does tell the story that it's an island. So we'll just center that like that. Put the tent embellishment there, and then island there, and then I'm just going to put graves right on top of it. Nice and neutral, but as I look at it, it's not all that legible, right? And I've got this thing with legible titles. I like them to be readable. So I'm just going to grab myself a piece of, actually I'm grabbing myself a little mat here that I use for mixed media. And I'm going to very carefully remove each of those letter stickers and use that frayed burlap distress ink to color each of these with my finger dauber. And I'm just getting it nice and absorbed into the cardstock or the chipboard. This chipboard takes ink beautifully, really, really beautifully. And I'm just going to layer this under the edge of the G. There you go. I'm using that same art glitter glue for these letters as well. I know at the beginning I said I wanted to use the Tombow because I knew it was strong, but you got to use it sometime, right, to learn whether it works for these kinds of projects. I'm sure it does. I've heard really great things that this glue is super strong and lasts like forever. So it's very satisfying inking these letters. I have a few ideas for how to use these unfinished chipboard letters. I really like them unfinished, actually. They're a beautiful gray that matches so perfectly with the gray cardstock in this kit. It's unbelievable. I love it so much. So I'm definitely going to use them unfinished a few times, but I've got a couple of different ideas about things that you can do with these letter stickers. So keep an eye on my channel. I might even make a little video just about different ideas for the letter stickers. So I'm just trying to decide what else to put on this page. I'd like to put something else to cover up that distracting crack in my windshield that is distracting me. So I'm using foam tape this time instead of foam dots. It's just, I'm hoping that she'll write a few words on the bottom of that. I'm considering that to be a journaling spot. So I want it to be solid enough that you can write on it. And that's why I used the foam tape. It's more solid and it's all one piece. So next I'm doing the backside of page number 3. I'm going to use this. This is from the boho collection, the boho sunshine collection from Simple Stories. It also came in the kit. Everything here came in the kit except for some of the things at the very, very end. So like the other page, I just traced it on the back side so that it'll be reverse of what it needs to be so that I can place it like that. I'm tracing those holes again, and like before, I'm just going to hand cut them. There's so few pages on this album that it's fine to do it this way. It's a little cumbersome, but it makes up for my mistake. So there you go. And once you get the hang of it, it does get a little bit faster once you figure out how you've got to angle your scissors so that you can get those 90-degree angles right. So that's going to fit perfectly right there. And I'm just going to use my liquid glue to go all around here. There we go. And you don't want to use so much glue that it's going to ooze out. So, I want the whole thing to be adhered, but I don't want so much glue that it's going to ooze out when I apply pressure and squeeze that pattern paper onto the chipboard. So that's why using that metal tip for the applicator is really great, because it controls how much glue you put on your page. There's that textured cardstock that looks so amazing with the natural chipboard. I'm going to use it here as a mat. And it has a wood grain texture embossed in the cardstock. So it's really, really textured already. And then I'm just taking my tonic texture tool. It's like a distress tool, and I'm just rubbing it. It has a little blade inside. It has a lot of little blades inside of it, and so I'm just rubbing it along one of those blades just to rough up that. And then oh, look at that texture. It's so nice. I'll use that as a mat for this, just to give the page, the photo a little bit more presence on this little side page. I am distressing the edges of that backpack flashcard. And here's where I think I'm going to use my little tags. In a second, I'm going to figure it out. This is a great spot for using some tuck-in tags. At first, I thought I'd use that star-shaped craft tag. And now I'm looking for some other things to potentially embellish here. Looking at the Simple Stories embellishments. Those first ones were the Cartabella embellishments. Happy Camper. There are arrows there, but there's no people in this photo to point to, so Happy Camper doesn't really make sense as much as I'd like to use it. I'm trying really hard to use it here. And then I remembered these little pieces, these 3 journaling pieces, and I thought, yeah, I can make a little pocket with the photo, and then that becomes the main element on this page would be these tuck-in journaling pieces. So then I don't really have to embellish it much more than that. I'm going to take another tag, and I did this on the first page, well, the back side of the first page as well. I layered a tag from the collection with the flashcard. I really liked how that looked before, so I'll just repeat it here. And I'm just stapling with my tiny attacher. I'm stapling these in place. I'll layer my backpack flashcard with that, and then because I outlined on the other tag, I'll outline on this tag. You're not seeing them in the same page anyways. You won't see them at the same time, but I like that consistency. Repeating elements like that. And the twine I could have placed it so that the twine stuck up and then you could see it from the front of the album, and that would be cool, but I didn't do that. Now I'm using score tape here. This is, I think it's 1/2 inch score tape, and that's going to give me this pocket, but I don't want the journaling pieces to be able to slide down and get lost in the pocket. So I'm adding extra tape there just to keep it so that those cards aren't going to slide all the way down. They'll never slide all the way down because the score tape is there to hold it. Score tape, by the way, is super, super powerful, strong adhesive, and it's really great to use on mini albums because once something is stuck down with score tape, it is never going anywhere again. Just going to trim down. This is the last photo that goes on the very back page, where I'm going to use the second piece of that pattern cardstock that I did run through my bind it all. So it does have the bind it all holes on it already. It's sitting up there above. Gonna ink the edges of that sleeping bag flashcard, and then I'm gonna decide that I actually don't want to put that there. This back page is going to be just the photo. That's it. It's all done. I'm thinking about it, but I'm not going to. Then because I'm like, why? Why is there a sleeping bag on this picture? It doesn't have any relevance. So that's why I decided not to use it at all. I had a quick look to see if there was anything else that was more appropriate, and I just thought it's fine the way it is. It's also the back page, so I don't want things that might potentially fall off on the back of an album. Usually the front and back will get the most handling, and really the back gets more handling than the front because of the way that you typically hold them. So I'm just admiring my pages here. I do this a lot. I just kind of like flip through, and I just like how I love mini albums, and I love how they look. So keep on thinking about putting more things on it, and I'm not going to. You could, and I might, but I'm not going to for this video. So we're just going to focus on getting her bound up, and then I'll leave any potential extra decorating for another day, probably towards the end of the month. It might be a good thing to do with leftovers from my kit. We'll see. But this is really cute just the way it is. My challenge with decorating is I err on the side of not as many embellishments. And so, yeah, I feel like those chipboard frames have enough embellishing on them already. I just used my little wire snips to cut off 6 rings. And I'm going to have to read the instructions to figure out how to do this because I forgot. It's been a while. With this machine, what you do is, well, for any machine, you kind of flip the front page so that it's on the back, and you bind it like that, and then no, you flip the back page so that it's on the front. Yeah, like it is now. The way that I did it is right, not the way I said it. So I'm just reading the instructions because I can't really remember exactly how I'm supposed to do this. And I still didn't read the instructions. I just looked at the pictures, and it was enough to trigger my memory to say, oh yeah, right. So there are these things, these templates that come with the bind it all, and you basically have to pick which width of ring you have. And I have the 3/4 inch ring. So I have to use this template. And as soon as this template can fit in here, that's when I know that this is the right size. Then you just kind of hold it all together and bam, it's bound. And then you just flip the back page right to the back where it's supposed to be. And now the little connectors of the rings are between the last page and the second last page. Now this mini album is great just as it is. I think it's decorated enough and simple enough and cute enough just as it is. I'm thinking about putting a subtitle or more of a title on the front. I'm just having a quick look at the kit to see what my options are for that, but I'm not going to at this point. I might come back. I have some ideas of things I could put on the tent, things I might stamp a title or use some stickers or something for a title on the tent, but for now I'm just going to leave it. It's fine just the way it is, but I do like to put a little bit of decoration on the spines of my mini albums. So I'm just going to put a couple of charms on here. I grabbed this twine because it just looked campfire-y, like it just looked like something that would go with camping supplies. Oh, look, this adventure, but it already says adventure. So I'm looking for some other acetate words that I might be able to use here, but I already used adventure there. So I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to use those. Those were just from my stash. They weren't from the kit. These are also from my stash. These are from Studio Calico. They're little acetate leaves from a kit from probably a year or 2 ago. And boy, they're really pretty. I've been hanging on to them and I haven't found the perfect time to use them. So I pulled those out and I thought it might be cool to have like 2 strings dangling from the binding and have these leaves at the ends of the strings. So I'm going over to my punch station and grabbing my 1/16 of an inch punch. This is from Fiskars. It's a really handy size to have because it pokes a really nice hole that is very, very, very tiny. So on a leaf this small, punching a bigger hole would be too much. The hole is so small that I can't get this twine through there. So what I'm doing is I am trying to thread that twine through a embroidery needle. I keep 2 embroidery needles right in my workspace so that I can do this with twine if I ever need to, because twine is tricky. So, of course, twine is made up of all kinds of other little threads, and so some of them went through the thing and some of them didn't. So it took me a while to get all of the little pieces in place, but as you can see, once your needle is threaded, it's a little bit easier to get, it's a lot easier to get that twine through the hole in the leaf. Those leaves have a little protective film on them, so I'm just taking that off. I'm going to tie these together. So I have a leaf at each end, leaf on one end, tie a knot, and now I want this one to be a different length than the first one, and tie another knot. So it's a double knot that's too big to go through that hole. And now I'm going to tie these to the binding so that they're hanging at different lengths. I think that's cute by itself, but I'm going to add one more thing. I'm just looking for something a little bit thicker. I don't like how the knot looks, so I'm going to tie just a little bit of ribbon here. And that just covers the knot where the twine was. And there it is. So I'll give you one more flip through after I tidy up a little bit so that you can see how this project looks at this phase. And like I said, keep an eye on my channel because I have a feeling I'm going to revisit this one and add some things to it. But I showed it to Liv and she said that she's happy to, she really wants it and is going to look forward to journaling on those little tabs. So before I do show the close-up photos of this one, I just wanted to thank my patrons who are on the screen right now. Patrons get, they help make this channel happen, so a great big thanks to them. And they get early ad-free access to all of my process videos, or at least most of them. And they also get real-time unedited versions of my videos. Many of them are live, but we also have a monthly formal live stream and some behind-the-scenes videos and just kind of, you know, chatty updates and that sort of thing. So if you're interested in having access to those sorts of perks, head on over to my Patreon. It is pretty inexpensive. It starts at $1 and you get access to everything. And it's really fun. We have a nice little community growing over there. And we also have a Discord forum and lots of places to chat. So these are the photos. Oh my gosh, I love how this one turned out and I can't wait to give it to Liv, but I am going to hang on to it for a couple more weeks while I think about whether I might want to add some things to it. So what do you think? If it was yours, would you leave it as it is or would you embellish it a little bit more? Also, let me know about the cinch if you have it. Should I upgrade from my bind it all? Oh, and the other thing I asked was, what about distress ink storage? Should I go for the Stampin' storage or not? Let me know. Take care. Bye-bye.